This tower would have lit every lamp in New York with no wires. It would have powered a ship crossing the Atlantic without a single cable on board. A phone in your pocket in 1910. Free electricity for every home on Earth. It stood 187 feet above Long Island. It stood there for 14 years. Then men with saws cut it down for scrap metal. Its inventor watched from a window and said nothing. Almost built. Case number 007. The tower Tesla built for the world. Nikola Tesla was 45 years old in 1901. He had already lit Niagara Falls. He had already built the alternating current system that runs your house today. He had already been called a wizard by newspapers on 3 continents. He wanted more. Tesla believed the entire planet was one giant electrical conductor. If you pushed current into the ground in one place, it would come out of the ground anywhere on Earth. No wires, no poles, no meters. Free power for every human being. He was probably right. Modern physicists still argue about it. An engineer who worked with him at Colorado Springs described watching Tesla stand inside a coil of purple lightning, adjusting a knob with bare hands. He said the man showed no fear of anything electrical. Ever. In the summer of 1901, Tesla walked into the office of the richest man in America. J.P. Morgan sat behind a mahogany desk that had crossed the Atlantic on his private yacht. Tesla told him about the tower. Morgan asked how much. $150,000. About $5 million in today's money. Morgan wrote the check. Tesla did not tell him the full plan. He said the tower would send messages across the ocean. Wireless telegraphy. A business Morgan could understand. He did not mention free electricity. He did not mention that no meter could measure what he was about to build. He did not mention that if it worked, the entire industry Morgan had spent 40 years financing would collapse in a decade. That omission would kill the tower 6 years later. It would also make Tesla die alone in a hotel room. The world in 1901 ran on wires. Every city was being strung with copper. Every telegram traveled a physical line. Every lamp needed a socket. Millions of miles of cable were being unspooled across continents at a cost that today reads as science fiction. 22% of American industrial investment went into electrical infrastructure that decade. Coal mines burned around the clock to feed generators. Ships carried cable to the seabed of every ocean. A message from London to Bombay cost a working man a week of wages. Tesla looked at this and saw waste. He believed the wires were a temporary embarrassment, a first draft. He believed within 20 years the entire grid would be gone, replaced by resonance and atmosphere and current pulled from the sky itself. He wrote about it in journals. He gave interviews. Reporters printed his predictions in Sunday supplements next to advertisements for corsets. Most people thought he was a genius who had gone strange. But 3 things made 1901 the moment it might have worked. First, no other wireless system existed yet. Marconi had sent a signal across a room, nothing more. Second, the American economy was flooded with money after the Spanish War. Investors were placing enormous bets on any technology that sounded new. Third, Tesla had already proven he could do impossible things. His Colorado Springs lab had produced artificial lightning 130 feet long. Locals reported horses screaming for miles. Sparks jumped from taps in nearby houses. The town's dynamo caught fire. The world had never seen anything like it. Which is why when Tesla asked for a plot of land on Long Island and a construction crew, Morgan said yes without hesitation. The tower would rise 70 miles east of Manhattan in a village called Shoreham, 200 acres of pine forest. 60 men. Ground broke in September 1901. Here's what almost was. The tower had to hold 3 tons of copper coil at the summit and channel millions of volts into the soil below. Nobody had built this before. Tesla designed the frame from wooden beams reinforced with iron. No steel. Steel would interfere with the electromagnetic field. Each beam was hand-cut, drilled, and fitted without a single ferrous nail. A metallurgist supervised every piece of hardware. The men worked through the winter of 1901. Snow came in November and did not leave until April. Fingers froze to the copper. One worker fell from the 3rd platform and lived. The wooden beams caught him. By late spring, the tower reached 187 feet. On top sat a copper dome shaped like a mushroom cap, 55 feet across. It looked like nothing anyone had ever seen. Farmers driving past on the Boston Post Road stopped their carriages and stared. A journalist from the New York Sun called it a cathedral built for lightning. Below the tower, Tesla dug. A shaft descended 120 feet into the ground. Iron pipes drove another 300 feet below that. This was the Earth side of the circuit that would carry current around the planet. Nobody had ever pushed a spike that deep for an electrical purpose. Ever. Tesla claimed the Earth would ring like a bell when he switched it on. The tower was ready. The ground was ready. Then the money ran out. Morgan's $150,000 was gone by the end of 1902. Tesla went back to the mahogany desk. He explained. The physics were larger than he first calculated. The copper alone had cost $60,000. The shaft, $40,000. Workers, insurance, land clearing. He needed another $100,000. Morgan said no. Not a refusal exactly. A pause. A request for more information. A meeting rescheduled twice. Tesla wrote letters. Long, exact mathematical letters. He described the resonance of the Earth's crust. He described the cost per household of electrical service after the tower was operational. 0. He described the newspapers that would announce it. Morgan did not write back for 6 weeks. When he did, he sent a small check, $20,000, enough to pay the crew for 2 months. Tesla took it. He kept building. He also started borrowing from friends, from bankers Morgan did not like, from a widow in Boston who had inherited a fortune and believed in him. He did not tell Morgan about the widow. That omission mattered later. Then, Marconi ended the race Tesla did not know he was in. December 12, 1901. From a hilltop in Cornwall, England, Guglielmo Marconi sent 3 dots, the letter S, across the Atlantic Ocean to a receiver in Newfoundland. The first transatlantic wireless message. The newspapers exploded. Marconi was on the front page for a week. Investors flooded his company. Governments signed contracts. Marconi had used equipment based partially on Tesla's own patents. Tesla knew this. He did not sue yet. He was building something bigger. But Morgan saw the headlines. Morgan had paid Tesla to build a transatlantic wireless station. Now, a 27-year-old Italian had already done it, with a hilltop and a kite. What was Morgan paying for? He sent a telegram. 2 words. Explain yourself, Tesla wrote back. He tried to explain that wireless telegraphy was not the real point. The real point was wireless power. He tried to explain that Marconi's system could send letters but not lift a light bulb. He tried to explain the world was about to change in a way Morgan did not yet understand. That was the mistake. Morgan read the letter. He read it twice. Then he understood exactly what he had been paying for. And he stopped paying. But before the money fully stopped, Tesla threw the switch once. June 15, 1903. Late evening. The sun had just set over Long Island Sound. 60 workers watched from a hillside 200 yards away. Tesla was inside the small brick building at the base of the tower. He was alone. He closed the primary circuit. The copper dome began to glow. A purple corona formed around the entire top of the tower. Tendrils of light reached upward into the sky. Some witnesses estimated 50 feet long. The air smelled of ozone and burning honey. The dome hummed at a pitch below human hearing that made the workers' teeth ache. The corona lasted 40 minutes. People in Shoreham village a mile away came out of their houses. A ship captain sailing off Port Jefferson reported seeing the tower lit like a lighthouse from 12 miles at sea. The next morning, the New York Sun reported strange lights over Long Island, but could not confirm the source. Tesla refused to comment. He wrote in his private notebook only this: the Earth responded. He was ready to broadcast power. He was also nearly broke. He had 3 months to convince Morgan to save the project. Tesla wrote 17 letters to Morgan between July and October 1903. Some pleaded, some threatened, some described the tower's success in scientific terms Morgan did not read. One letter arrived with a small vial of ozone from the corona. Tesla's proof it had worked. Morgan's secretary threw the vial away. The bank sent form replies. Then no replies at all. Tesla approached other financiers. Rockefeller sent a polite refusal. Astor was dead. Andrew Carnegie met with Tesla for 20 minutes and said the project sounded interesting, but he preferred to fund libraries. Everyone Morgan disapproved of was already broke or about to be. Morgan controlled the banks. Morgan controlled the trusts. Morgan controlled which men in New York could raise $100,000 on short notice. By late 1904, Tesla was paying the tower's night watchman out of his own pocket. He was not building anymore. He was maintaining. The workers were gone. The equipment sat covered in canvas. The copper dome still shone in the afternoon light. An engineer who visited that winter said the tower looked like it was waiting for someone to come back and finish. Nobody was coming. But between the June test and Morgan's final silence, something almost happened. October 1903. Tesla convened a small group of scientists at Wardenclyffe. The estate had been named for the man who sold him the land. 6 men in wool suits stood at the base of the tower on a cold morning. The wind came off the sound. Nobody spoke. Tesla threw the switch. The corona formed within seconds. The scientists took notes. He demonstrated 3 things that morning. First, he lit a bank of incandescent bulbs mounted on a wooden post 300 yards from the tower. The bulbs had no wires. They glowed steadily for 11 minutes. Second, he powered a small electric motor buried in the soil half a mile away. The motor was connected to a rotating drum with a pencil that scratched a line on paper. The line came out steady. Third, he predicted the tower would soon send that same signal to a receiver in Paris. He was probably right. The math was sound. The corona was real. The bulbs had lit. The motor had turned. One of the visiting scientists, a professor from Yale, wrote in his diary that evening that he had watched the future turned on for 11 minutes and then turned off, and he could not understand why the world was not on fire with excitement. 6 weeks. 6 weeks until the world would have known. Tesla planned the announcement for early December 1903. He drafted a press release. He arranged for reporters from 4 countries to attend a public demonstration on December 21st. On November 3rd, Morgan's final letter arrived. The funding was terminated. All prior loans were called in. The bank informed Wardenclyffe that no further credit would be extended under any circumstance. The demonstration was canceled. The reporters were told the equipment was undergoing modifications. The equipment was never turned on again. One letter killed it. J.P. Morgan ended Wardenclyffe with a single sentence in a private note. The sentence read, "If anyone can draw on the power, where do we put the meter?" He was 70 years old. He was worth more than the government treasuries of most European countries. He had built his fortune on things people had to buy through wires: telegraphs, electrical grids, banking clearances. Every one of those systems depended on a physical connection that could be counted and billed. Tesla's tower would make the connection invisible. You cannot bill what you cannot measure. You cannot own what everyone has. Morgan did not hate Tesla. Morgan simply understood, on the day he read Tesla's explanation, that he had been paying to destroy his own empire. He stopped. He also told other bankers to stop. The word traveled through the clearinghouses of New York in under a week. By the end of November 1903, Tesla could not borrow $20 in that city on the strength of the tower. Tesla fired the workers. He hired a caretaker. He returned to Manhattan and moved into a hotel room. He kept the tower under maintenance for 11 more years, waiting for a benefactor who never came. World War I arrived in 1914. Copper became a strategic material. The government requisitioned metal from any structure not in active use. In 1917, the tower was demolished for scrap. The wooden frame was burned on site. The copper dome was sold for $1,800. Tesla was in a hotel room 3 miles away when the tower fell. He did not attend. He never mentioned the tower publicly again. Gone. Here's what the world would look like today if the tower had been switched on for Paris in December 1903. Every home on Earth might have received power without a bill, not because free electricity is impossible. Tesla had proven it worked at short range, but because once the principle was public, the entire industry of billing for electricity would have needed a different business model. The infrastructure build-out of the 20th century might have skipped the utility company entirely. Consumer devices in 1910 could have been portable: radios in coat pockets, motors and tools, lights in soldiers' helmets during the war that came 10 years later. Wireless data, the internet, might have arrived 50 years earlier, riding on the same standing waves Tesla had demonstrated across his workshop. Or nothing might have happened. The physics of Tesla's system are still debated. Modern engineers have replicated small-scale wireless power transmission, but not the planetary scale Tesla claimed. It is possible he was right, and the world lost a century. It is possible he was wrong and Morgan spared everyone from an expensive failure. Nobody will know. Ever. What survives is patents. Tesla filed 112 of them related to wireless transmission before he died. Most were never commercialized. A few became the foundation of modern radio, radar, and remote control, also surviving. One wall of the brick powerhouse at Wardenclyffe. It was left standing after the demolition because it was cheaper than tearing down. It has stood on that Long Island field for over 100 years, in the middle of what became a photography film factory, then a chemical plant, then a Superfund cleanup site. In 2012, a nonprofit raised $1.3 million on the internet to buy the land. They opened a Tesla museum on the site in 2018. The wall is now a national landmark. Visitors take photographs of it. An engineer who worked on the restoration described touching the wall for the first time and feeling nothing. No charge, no vibration, no sign the tower had ever stood there. He said it was the emptiest wall he had ever touched. He said, walking away felt like walking away from a grave. Tesla died on January 7, 1943, in room 3327 of the Hotel New Yorker in Manhattan. He was 86 years old. He weighed less than 100 pounds. His only companions in the final years were the pigeons he fed on the windowsill. He owed the hotel $2,000 in back rent. The FBI arrived within hours of his death and seized every notebook, every diagram, every letter in the room. Some of those papers are still classified today, more than 8 decades later. Nobody has published what was on them. The blueprints for the tower survived. They sit in a climate-controlled archive at the New York Public Library. They have been requested by researchers 11 times since 1980. 6 of those requests came from engineering PhD students. 5 came from anonymous foreign visitors who paid cash for the copy fees and left no forwarding address. The tower has not been rebuilt. The blueprints still exist. This tower would have lit every lamp in New York with no wires. It would have powered a ship crossing the Atlantic without a cable. It would have put a phone in your pocket in 1910. Free electricity for every home on Earth. None of it happened. The wall stands on a field in Shoreham. The blueprints sit in a box in Manhattan. The pigeons still land where his window used to be. The Earth is still ringing. Nobody is listening.